I'm Eric Udston. I'm what you would call a classic serial software entrepreneur. I've founded 5 different companies over the last 25 years. The most recent I founded about 2 years ago, a company called TwinThread, which provides predictive analytics to industrial companies to help them avert failure and to optimize their production operations.
My name is Lion McCandless. I am starting 2 ventures. The first is Dunk. The second is Good Crickets.
Hey, I'm Evan Edwards. I'm VP of Innovation, Development, and Industrialization, and I'm co-founder of Kaleo Incorporated. We're headquartered in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm also an iLab mentor. So when you think about effectuation, and you think about patchwork quilt, crazy quilt, as sometimes it's often called, what does that really mean?
The crazy quilt principle in effectuation refers to the self-selection of stakeholders. Instead of going out and talking to people, particular people with particular resources and trying to bring them on board through a pitch, in the case of effectuation, you talk to anybody and everybody and allow people to self-select into the process. People can self-select into their role and also bring in whatever resources they feel they can afford to lose to work with you.
The crazy quilt is important because it actually serves 3 functions. First off, it gives you access to the additional means which come to you from your partners. Second, it spreads risk between you and your partners. And third off, your partners' commitments help prioritize different venture directions from others that are dead ends or less interesting.
The crazy quilt principle is about being open. It's about openness. Don't have your ideas too set and let others come in and shape your ideas.
You start talking to everybody and anybody that you meet along the way. You might have some ideas who you want to talk to, but you're open to talking to people that you had not planned to talk to as well. And the way you talk to people is to allow them to think through with you, to co-create even the vision and mission of the venture in some ways. But in the process, people can come into the venture in ways that matter to them.
Interactions give you new means to work with, and new individuals to work with, and new potentials to consider. Commitments help you choose between those and help you prioritize. Sometimes those choices will take you in a somewhat different direction or a very different direction that some people will call a pivot. Regardless, the point is that as you work your way through the effectual process, it's guided by the people that you talk with and then those that make commitments to you.
Well, for me as an entrepreneur, as someone who was working on a drug-device combination product early on and had no clue, I was a second year in college when IntelliJect, our company, was started. And for me, it was all about how do I develop relationships and how do I ensure, one, to develop the company, we can be successful. And you rely on a lot of who you know.
As most people say, you never know who knows something or who knows someone else, but it really is true because I am definitely the only venture in the iLab pursuing insects. But you never know who else might have some related experience. So I was debating on some methods of selective breeding and happened to turn around, and the venture behind me was a scientist who had his own experience growing crickets and also doing selective breeding for other kind of organisms, but still we all of a sudden struck up a random conversation talking about the feasibility of selective breeding of crickets and what yada yada, and he turned me on to some really good research articles and different scientists who I could contact and dive further into it, and that's just something walking in that day I never thought could happen.
So the crazy quilt principle is probably the most complex effectuation principle in a way, and it captures the idea of exposing yourselves to others, sharing your ideas, and then seeking a feedback that comes in the form of a self-selected stakeholder commitment.
I remember another story of my brother, my twin brother Eric, who is co-founder of the company. He said early on, I don't know how we're going to ensure that this product, our epinephrine auto-injector that we were developing, is going to be successful without getting our key thought leaders on board and trying to understand who are those key thought leaders in the allergy space. And so he decided, hey, well, why don't I just call, Dr. Estelle Simons, who's one of the world thought leaders in anaphylaxis. Little did we know, you're not supposed to do that, but in college we were so naive. You don't just pick up the phone and call, a seasoned physician who has been published in over 100, tier 1 journals and is a world expert on allergy. You don't just get her number and call her, but hey, that's what Eric did. And that just goes to the fact when you're dealing with trying to patch that quilt of different people, you got to find the people, but you have to take risk, and you can't be afraid, and you have to don't be afraid to ask the why and ask the how. And the big thing is ask, period. If you're not asking the questions and challenging yourself, it's going to be very difficult, especially given the resources that you have. So he calls up Dr. Simons and shares our story of identical twins with severe allergies developing a novel epinephrine autoinjector, and they hit it off immediately. And to this day, she continues to guide us as a mentor and a key thought leader for the company.
It's never just the entrepreneur's sole vision. It's really all of the people that are coming together, particularly in those formative times where it's just the first few individuals. They're defining the product, they're defining the culture, and it's more than just the original entrepreneur defining that.
The standard view of a market and building a successful venture within a marketplace is like a jigsaw puzzle. The first thing you want to notice is that the picture is already given. You do not get to build a picture on your own. And as you start playing the jigsaw puzzle, as you start putting the picture together, you're constantly looking for the right piece in the right place. Assuming you have all the pieces, your task is still driven by the picture that's already given to you in some ways. But now imagine a few of the pieces are actually missing. What do? You have to either actually make those pieces up on your own, or you're just simply stuck with a picture with holes in them.
When you start the Crazy Quilt, you have no idea what the end result will look like. And it is only through patching together pieces of other people who come to work with you and finding the fabric which you have up in the attic that ultimately completes that Crazy Quilt. That's the effectual option.
The purpose of the effectual conversation is not to gather information. The purpose of the effectual conversation is to gather commitments. So only information that actually comes with skin in the game is relevant.
And every time we get into a conversation, we offer little and they offer little. We persuade them, they persuade us. And we begin to sort of make commitments to each other of, I'll do this if you do that. And so you have a lot of sort of exchange of ideas that lead to collaboration, where you never could see the quilt coming together, but over time, as you go around and around, you end up saying, hey, I have this relationship, and now we can do this together, and now I said I'd do that for Susie, and Susie's going to do this for us over here, and it just kind of all meshes together.
The challenge is that a lot of folks on the other side, they don't think effectually. They are not looking to build partnerships. They are not looking to co-create with you. So maybe out of 100 conversations that you have, 5 or 3 or 2 or 1 might be ready to co-create with you. Right? And so you have to develop that ability of figuring out what is that surface area which matches between what we want to achieve in the future. And how can we get skin in the game into that, where you own what we need to do together.
So in every conversation in the effectual case, you're really looking to people who are willing to commit something that is valuable. And to the extent that the other person commits something, you go in that direction. So you are moved at every step in the Crazy Quilt process in effectuation by what people are actually investing.
So what happens is, as an entrepreneur, you have to go talk to not only many stakeholders, potential stakeholders, you have to talk to different types of stakeholders and stitch that their small amounts of differentiated affordable loss, differentiated skin in the game into that Crazy Quilt. And that's what makes it a Crazy Quilt, because you're not even stitching 2 pieces of cloth together. You're like stitching 1 piece of cloth, another piece of leather, and maybe a piece of metal, and maybe a piece of stone together to create this thing.
So one way to think about the crazy quilt process is that there is something embedded in the fact that multiple stakeholders are coming on board, including non-targeted, unexpected stakeholders who come on board, and they all inject creativity into the process.